tribute to the Polaris, reprising the hands, the typeface, the dial layout, even the internal bidirectional rotating dive-style bezel, and the perforated caseback was a tribute to that original 1968 Polaris. Now, of course, that one had 16 perforations. This one has fewer than that, but we are going to forgive that oversight because this watch was sensational. 42 millimeters in stainless steel, it's automatic, it's an alarm, and you can see the elements that Aston Martin brought to the table with the bottom 90 degrees of the dial not calibrated like a tachymeter scale, a tachometer on a dashboard, or a speedometer. Now the watch is wonderfully slim. You can see that gorgeous box section sapphire designed to recall a mid-century plexiglass. When I turn it over, however, you can see it, but you can't hear it. This is what I have to give you if I've given you an alarm watch. I have to give you a listen. Caliber 918 automatic winding. In service from 1983 to about 2008. It's not the roar of an Aston Martin V12, but believe me, it will wake you up in the morning. Now, this is a fantastic watch because, first of all, unlike all of the Polaris tribute watches, this watch is its own thing. It's not attempting to be a line-for-line, note-for-note, millimeter-for-millimeter reproduction of anything. You can see the Polaris, you can also see a vintage speedometer, but it's neither nor. It's its own watch, and 20 years from now, this is a watch for which JLC will think about issuing tribute models. The tribute to Polaris models, I don't know, because they bask in reflected glory. This watch has its own identity, and all that for under $7,000 in stainless steel. That is a watch that I can get on board with. Now, of course, that was not the only Aston Martin series watch. The series ran from 2005 to 2015 when it ended with the Amvox 7, but the first two were all-timers. I'm actually wearing my own personal Amvox 2 tonight. Now, the Amvox 2 was a path beyond compared to the Amvox 1. More ambitious, even more original. It was like a concept watch, and originally priced at under $16,000. It wasn't even within the realm of grail watches, and, you know, frankly, if you're in the price range where you could think about buying a Ducati, a Harley Davidson, or a Boston Whaler, you could have owned this watch new. Now, pre-owned, these sell for under $7,000. Here's the thing. It's actually a articulated case. It has no pushers for the chronograph. You use the case to reset the watch, start the watch, and you have parallel counters in disc form for hours and for minutes with a three-dimensional dial. Again, if it said Richard Mille, it would be a six-figure watch. Column wheel, vertical clutch, two-barrel, 65-hour power reserve, all in titanium. What I love about these first two Amvoxes is that the branding is so discreet. You see it on the case back, and then there's hardly anything visible. You can just barely see the wing logo on the dial side. And on the Amvox 1, you'll note it's even more discreet. There's nothing to give up the game here, not even the ghosted wings of the Amvox 2. The only way you know is the case back. That in type lightweight continuations, Bramant made it a model line in 2015, and this might have been the most appealing model in that line. Now, technically, this is the Bramant Jaguar Mark II. A couple of features stand out. First and foremost, you want to shout out the design, which parallels the Smith's gauges that were found on the original Jaguar E-Type. Now, Smith's is well known in British watchmaking, essentially an extinct brand. Yes, have there been attempts at reviving it? Sure, but it's only the real thing once. So you have the design of those Smith's gauges, and this is probably their truest living ancestor. The design of the gauges on a chronograph based on a Valjoux 7750 base, you can see highly elaborated. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer, and you can see the punched out metal wheel of the Jaguar E-Type lightweight. Aluminum for sporting applications, punched out aluminum being a feature of both the frame and the interior. Now, the watch features elements of the dial dashboard instruments that you might miss at first glance. First, note that the minute hand features a half-blackened span. The blackened half essentially canceling out the inner portion that might overlap with the hours, both of them featuring a metallic conical cap, just like the original Smith's gauges. You can see on the constant seconds indicator at 9 o'clock that there's a small red swept portion, which is the equivalent part of the register that would have been the red line on the Smith's tachometer for the Jaguar E-Type. And of course you have the vintage Jaguar logo at 6 o'clock with a handsome typeface inspired by those original gauges. Now this watch for me brings it all together. You have 100-meter water resistance, you have finishing that is as good as anything you're going to find under $7,000. Is it mechanically applied? Yes. Is it standard? Anything but. Handsome on both sides. You even have the Jaguar logo inset in the crown, which itself features a tire tread knurling pattern. This is an incredibly handsome watch that you can now get for under $4,500. 43 millimeters in stainless steel. Again, this is an aquatic watch with 100-meter water resistance. So whether you're timing your car trackside at Daytona Speedway or jumping into the surf on Daytona Beach, this one has got you set. And interesting, then for under $5,000, the Girard-Perregaux R&D01 Chronograph East Coast Jewelry 20th Anniversary Limited Edition of 20 pieces. Now this is a watch that came out in 2006, 43 millimeters in stainless steel. Luigi Macaluso, who purchased Girard-Perregaux and reshaped it during the 1990s, was the driving force behind this watch. Now the watch features a Girard-Perregaux 3000 series manufactured base caliber with a 46-hour power reserve. We were talking about perlage. Note how Girard-Perregaux uses petite perlage rather than a macro. I always appreciated that. But the watch features an internal rotating bidirectional bezel. It features a vertical clutch chronograph module. It actually features a 24-hour scale that gives you AM/PM for the time at center. The dial is spectacularly luminescent. So you've got just about everything you could possibly need here. You've got a chronograph, you've got an internal rotating bezel, you've got a 24-hour scale, and the watch is designed with a sort of inverted chronograph. That is to say, you actually start the chronograph using the trigger right here, and you stop the chronograph using the trigger right here. I'm going to wind this one up to show you how it works, because this is a bit of a special piece. My cameraman Harrison tonight doing yeoman duty, he's not feeling well, so spare a thought for Harrison. He's not at his best, but he's always at his best, if you know what I mean. He's a total pro. Harrison, thank you. Okay. So now I've got this wacky, no-holds-barred, motorsport-inspired chronograph ready to read. A couple of things I want to point out here. First, you see that special screw-down crown for the bidirectional rotating bezel. This is great for timing a single stint at Le Mans. When you've got a Le Mans prototype, and especially the big prototypes, they're going to have a 45 to 50-minute fueling interval. So if you want to line this up with your minute hand, while you have the chronograph running, you can time a second separate interval. Now the other thing that's important to remember is that the watch has a radial minutes indicator. You can't quite see it underneath the minute hand, but if you see that triangular index, the watch actually has a radial minute indicator, so you can read seconds and minutes off the center dial. I appreciate that because for me, a sub-register for minutes is just too difficult to read, and you want example A, B, and C, generally considered to be the first and last word in motorsports chronographs. Tell me you can read the minute off that Rolex Daytona. No, I didn't think so. That's why they give you this watch after you win the race. If you're still in the heat of battle, you're going to want this Girard-Perregaux R&D01, designed in consultation with actual racing drivers. Like I said, it's a little bit backwards the way it works because, as you can see, once the watch is on my wrist, I'm going to be manipulating it like so. We could do a little wrist shot. I'm using my thumb to manipulate the chronograph. That's why it's arranged the way it is, for ergonomics. Now, of course, you can see that it also works backwards. As the chronograph action, if we can go back to our macro camera, the chronograph actually starts and stops with the bottom trigger because everything's inverted, and then you reset it using the trigger on the top. I love this watch in range. Now this is a sub $4,000 purist's watch from the modern Tag Heuer, and that's not something I'll say often. In 2004, we celebrated what was then believed to be the 40th anniversary of the Carrera. It was retroactively realized that the original watch came out in 1963. No matter. It was a wonderful occasion to pay tribute to the early Carrera 2447 and Jack Heuer, the last scion of the Heuer ownership. And of course, you see his signature there in a watch that is one of 1,964 pieces. But here's the kicker. Stainless steel, with a dial inspired by the reference 1153S, one of the caliber 11 automatic Carreras that came later. The case itself is inspired by the earlier 2447. 39 millimeters, which means anyone can wear this watch with panache. It's an ETA 2894 automatic vertical clutch chronograph inside, and you can see in profile, I always love this. I appreciate it because it's a sign of attention to detail and also a sign that some money was spent. This is what a box section sapphire looks like. It's large. It has 3 dimensions. It's almost like a little bit of a sapphire prism. And it shows you that the designers worked overtime and the accounting department was willing to allocate the money to get something that's considerably more complex and expensive than a flat sapphire. You have that here on this limited edition 40th anniversary Tag Heuer Carrera. Now this is in every way a deluxe piece. You can see calf skin rather than the original synthetic is used. The synthetic would have been featured in the 60s and 70s. And of course, the watch features a full and fully polished clasp rather than a pin buckle. This is a wonderful little piece that represents something like the best modern iteration of the Carrera. This is one that both Tag and Heuer guys revere equally and collect with equal opportunity. So again, if you're not into Tag but you're totally into Heuer, this might be the one that unites both threads of the company's history for you. A handsome opaline silver dial with that shock of red counterweighted Lancet chronograph seconds and those metallic gray registers. This one simply zings me, and I'm not a Tag or a Heuer guy. Bell & Ross BRX1 RS16, it's a limited edition of 250 pieces. This watch originally retailed for $24,200, which is to say it was solidly into Audemars Piguet Royal Oak offshore territory. I'm not sure that Bell & Ross has the street cred to play in that league. But for $14,000 pre-owned, you have my attention. There's a lot to love here. Now the case is 45 millimeters, but it's 45 millimeters square. It incorporates titanium, ceramic, forged carbon, and natural vulcanized rubber. Who makes the case? Well, I'm glad you asked. G&F Chatelaine. Now Chatelaine is one of the top case manufacturers in the world. They're one of the best in the business. They are actually owned by Chanel, which also owns Bell & Ross. So by serendipitous circumstance, one of the top case makers in the industry is making the case for the sensationally packaged BRX1 RS16 limited edition chronograph. Now what's inside? Well, it's essentially a ETA 2894 or equivalent 2892 with DD module. Vertical clutch chronograph, 42-hour power reserve. What really sets this watch apart is that even though it has a spectacular motorsports-inspired style, and you can see that's right down to the carbon fiber inlay of the strap, the watch is also 100 meters water resistant. So it is a full-service sports watch for land sports, for water sports, and let's face it, Bell & Ross, they have aviation DNA. Should you take to the sky, this watch is properly disposed to do so. I'll also say this, the open dial adds another dimension of depth and luster that would be otherwise lacking if it were shut down, closed, and cloistered. So you can see more of the caliber on the dial side than you can on the reverse side. And you know what? That's not a bad idea for an aggressive motorsports-themed sports watch, and you can see Renault Sport and their marquee on the case back. This is a watch that's also ergonomically superb. It's a 45 that doesn't wear like a 45, and let me show you what I mean. Because the watch is square, it takes that original 2005 Bell & Ross instrument watch aesthetic, and it adapts it for a purpose that is, again, motorsports oriented, but ergonomics are ergonomics. The case fit perfectly when it first bowed in 2005, now composed of titanium forged carbon, rubber, and ceramic. It's lighter than ever on the wrist, and you can see I can wear this watch easily. Even though my wrist is only 16 centimeters in circumference, this is an easy fit for me. I could be wearing this on a smaller wrist than I actually have. So Bell & Ross nails the ergonomic equation with first-class styling, first-class ergonomic engineering, and a high style of the test track Fiorano in Maranello, Italy. Well, what do I have for you in a traditional vein for the man of discretion and taste? Well, in 1999, to celebrate the anniversary of the original Scuderia Ferrari, Girard-Perregaux, then Ferrari's high horology partner, released the watch you see here. This is the Girard-Perregaux Scuderia Rattrapant Foudroyant, a watch featuring both a flying second and a split-second chronograph capability. It pays tribute to that span between 1929 and 1999 that runs the era from Enzo to Michael Schumacher. Here's the thing. Enzo Ferrari was originally the factory racing team principal for Alfa Romeo during the interwar period. So the Scuderia Ferrari was originally the factory racing outfit for Alfa Romeo. That's why Ferrari race cars started to be built in 1947, but Scuderia Ferrari, the race team, dates back to 1929. As you can see, this is a limited edition of 250. Let me wind this one up, because when I say it's a Rattrapant Foudroyant, I kind of have to show you what I'm talking about. The visual fireworks with this one are spectacular. Easily equal to the horrendous fireworks related to those McLaren engines of the last few seasons. But while those things exploded unintentionally, this thing is visually explosive by design. I'll talk a little bit about the caliber, but I think the important thing to remember with this watch is that it was the product of a sincere mutual admiration and friendship. Luigi Macaluso, the man who was the driving force behind the development of the RND01 chronograph for racing drivers, he was himself a rally champion, a European rally champion. He was the Italian distributor for Girard-Perregaux during the 1980s. In the early 90s, he bought the company right around the time Luca di Montezemolo, Enzo Ferrari's hand-picked successor, was taking over Ferrari, redesigning the road range under a new regime and reimagining the Scuderia to put it back on top in Formula One. So out of mutual admiration, they had a prior friendship from before Montezemolo ran Ferrari and before Macaluso owned Girard-Perregaux. In 1994, they agreed to a partnership that led to these co-branded efforts that are already collectibles and are appreciating on pre-owned markets. Now, of course, with the split-second chronograph functionality, you have the ability to time two concurrent events, such as two automobiles crossing a start-finish line. And with the flying second, you have the ability to measure an interval down to 1/8 of a second. So it's both a Foudroyant lightning second and a Rattrapant, which is a fly-forward second hand. A spectacular watch. It also has a gorgeous combination of gilt-style printing with red highlights, a gloss black dial, rose gold leaf hands, and a beautiful lollipop counterweight seconds hand. This is as good as it gets in terms of style. And again, under $12,000, I have to say this thing brings Patek Philippe style with Girard-Perregaux manufacturer credibility and a wonderful backstory. The tale I just told you is the ultimate icebreaker when you're trying to convince a friend who's into cars that he also needs to respect watches. Macaluso and Montezemolo, Ferrari and Girard-Perregaux. This was as good as it got during the 1990s. For under $3,500, new for 2016, and a limited edition of 1,963 pieces. This was the Baume & Mercier Capeland Shelby Cobra limited edition with Cobra accents, and note the motorsports logic with the chronograph registers for hours and minutes, a separate color from the constant seconds. This is a watch that pays tribute to old number 15, the 1963 Cobra 289, the first Cobra 289 CSX 2128 that ripped up the FIA endurance racing scene in the hands of legendary drivers like the late Dan Gurney that year against the likes of Maserati, Ferrari, and all comers from the old shores of Europe. This is a 44mm watch that gives you large wrist presence, significant historical acknowledgments in the form of the Yellow on black, which was the color scheme of CSX 2128, without being overtly branded, their only real Cobra branding is the counterweight to the seconds hand on the dial side. Now on the back, it goes all shell, and all shell would be proud, but this is a very versatile watch that, where smaller than 44 might suggest, it's less than 52 from lug to lug. And let me give you an idea what this one looks like on the wrist. They do a couple of things that I like. First, it's a big watch with short lugs, so a little wrist can wear it. That's 44 millimeters, and again, under $3,500. It's a Valjoux 7750 48-hour power reserve tank tough. It's actually a Valjoux 7753 because you have the classical balanced tri-register layout. This is a lot of style for not a lot of money from a real company that's been around since the 19th century, and thanks to Richemont ownership and a huge popularity in the Far East, will be around forever to service your watch. It also has some deluxe features you might not expect in this price range, such as an alligator leather rather than calfskin strap, and a rubber underlay. Yes, a vulcanized yellow rubber underlay to separate the leather from the oils, heat, and moisture of your wrist to extend the life of the strap, plus a full steel deployant clasp rather than a pin buckle. This is a watch that punches above its weight in terms of value and specification. And again, if you're a motorsports fan, you like your watches and your wheels, but you don't necessarily want to broadcast to the world that you're wearing a car watch, this gets it done, just like old CSX 2128 did in 1960.
I received a few comments that it would be crazy to fly around the world just to check out the new Rolex watches from the recent release. Some people were even disappointed that there was no new watch incoming that day. During a few calls before the trip, my AD warned me as well. He told me, "Nico, we have no watches available. The store is more than short of supply." But being obsessed with Rolex, for certain people like me, these watches are more than just a piece of jewelry or a machine that tells the time. It is the passion to make the best possible timepieces with unique and innovative features like the new fluted platinum bezels, the left-handed GMT watch, or the unique Falcon's Eye dial you see on the new Yachtmaster. All of that produced at perfection like no other brand can do. The day I put a Rolex on my wrist for the first time still feels like yesterday, and so trying these incredible watches on my own wrist and not only seeing them on pictures or on a video was an absolute pleasure for me. After now more than 2 years being a client at this store, it also feels like home, and the relationship to the employees is fantastic. So visiting them after a long time felt like visiting friends again. And here are the free watches for us. Fresh from Geneva. Fully stickered, never touched before. The Explorer 36mm, a true icon, and it is the watch that climbed Mount Everest. And as you know me guys, I have a long history and absolutely love my Explorer 39. The Starbucks for my friend, of course one of the most iconic Rolex watches ever made. And the Coral Red Oyster Perpetual 36mm, which is so unbelievable hard to get. I think getting offered one of these discontinued Oyster Perpetual models shows how great the relationship became between the store and me. On top of all of that, My AD gave me a small gift to the watches, a genuine Rolex leather wallet. Super nice of him, and this is definitely not the norm. I guess he values the journey I usually do to visit him. The watches are resized. And now it is time to remove all the stickers.
Hello and welcome to yet another installment of Mr. Luxury, a channel in which I attempt to fill you in on the most luxurious brands, topics and endeavors that happen in the insane and sometimes obnoxious world of luxury. In today's video, I will be going through some of the best names in the luxury watch market. All of these amazing watches exemplify what it means to be a classy, reliable, and stylish timepiece. So, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe has taken pride in design and has made top-of-the-line watches since it was founded in 1851. Their collection of watches are known for being unique in terms of their functionality, all the while classic in terms of style. This combination ensures a sense of class that is topped by no other brand in the high-end watch market. Some of the most iconic complications of Patek Philippe watches include moon phase, star charts, and perpetual calendars. These cutting-edge technological methods of keeping precise time lead to a hefty price tag and a uniquely accurate time teller that you simply can't get anywhere else. Famous historical figures such as Queen Victoria, Prince Albert, and Christian IX of Denmark have all been known to wear Patek Philippe timepieces. These legendary figures undoubtedly cement Patek Philippe as a brand of royalty. As I mentioned, the Swiss brand was founded in 1851 and will likely go on steeped in class for hundreds of years. The price range of a Patek Philippe ranges between $15,000 and $1 million plus. And the most expensive Patek Philippe ever sold was that of Henry Grave Jr.'s Super Complication watch that went for $24 million in 2014. Besides the esteemed array of royalty that has been known to sport the beautiful watch brand, other notable celebrities that have taken to the brand include Ellen DeGeneres, John Mayer, Nicolas Sarkozy, and the avid watch collector Robert Downey Jr. Omega. There are many reasons why this luxury watch brand rose to fame, but perhaps the two reasons that stand out the most is the fact that Omega has been keeping the time in the Olympic Games since 1932, and secondly, Omega accompanied the astronauts that landed on the moon in 1969. Those two heavy doses of credibility might stand above the rest, unless, of course, you're a Bond fan like myself. And if you are, I don't need to tell you Omega watches has been worn in several different James Bond films. The first spotted in 1995. Daniel Craig is the latest Bond to rock the Omega, and in fact, the Seamaster Planet Ocean watch that was worn by Craig in Casino Royale was sold at an auction for over $250,000. As with Patek Philippe, the Swiss brand is also fit for royalty, as its famous wearers include Prince William, as well as John F. Kennedy, Elvis Presley, George Clooney, and Steve Carell. Omega watches come in a variety of different styles and functions, making this brand particularly diverse. Somehow, Omega has managed to keep a sense of luxury despite offering such a large collection. In the luxury world, brands tend to stick to their guns, lest they risk falling out of their own expertise that they claim. Omega, however, takes on a broader array and still demands the respect that other top-notch luxury watch brands beg for. Omega has earned these stripes with its historical work, as well as its contemporary status as a leading luxury brand for timepieces. In fact, Britain's Royal Flying Corps selected Omega watches as the official timekeepers for combat units in 1917. The American Army shortly followed suit in 1918. The price range of Omega watches runs anywhere between $1,000 and $700,000. Breitling. Breitling was founded in 1884 and was inspired by aviation. This inspiration is seen in the malicious design in the watches and in the links that are taken to ensure this watch will function anywhere. Breitling is well known for high-performance watches, especially for dive watches or aviator watches. If you're looking to make extreme changes in altitude while looking as stylish as ever, then Breitling just might be the watch brand for you. That is, of course, if you can afford it. Because of this dependability through changing environmental conditions, the brand is popular with firefighters and astronauts. Each timepiece created and designed by Breitling has a certified chronograph, and many also feature automatic winding mechanisms. Other key features of the watch that make them unique are the transmitters in Breitling's emergency watches. Back in 2003, 2 British pilots crashed their helicopter in Antarctica. However, they were rescued after they set off their transmitters. And amidst all the measures taken to make the watch as reliable as possible, the brand still embodies a sense of elegance and an unmistakable sense of style. Just like Omega, a Breitling watch has appeared in a James Bond movie. If you look close enough, you can see the Bond sporting one in Thunderball. Last April, the luxury Swiss watch brand Breitling was sold for an enormous $870 million. Famous wearers of the brand include John Travolta and David Beckham, and the price of the watches can range between $3,000 and $280,000. Rolex. Rolex is one of the most recognized watch brands in the market. Rolex has accomplished something truly special in the world of luxury watches. The brand has managed to become ubiquitous, which is inherently good for business, but has managed to keep its prestige and status as a brand of luxury. It's truly the only luxury watch brand that everyone has heard of. Much like Omega, the watches that Rolex produce range in style as well as function, but they typically hold to the cutting edge of modern watch technology. Unlike so many other watches in the market, Rolex watches hold their value and have a high resale value, making them a valuable asset and a watch to invest in. Some of the most popular timepieces designed and created by Rolex are the Submariner, the Yacht Master, and the Date Just. Despite the soaring popularity of Rolex's iconic watches, each timepiece is still made by hand. Internationally recognized as a status symbol, Rolex watches are forever in high demand, especially the Rolex Daytona and the Rolex Submariner. We see this popularity being synonymous with luxury in the car industry. For instance, pretty much everyone knows about a Lamborghini, but not everyone can afford one. Rolex has achieved this, and trust me, this is no small feat in the exclusive and niche luxury watch market. The end result is the most identifiable luxury watch brands. Rolex happens to be the first watch on our list that isn't Swiss. Its British origins are still represented in this brand's consistently classic designs. Rolex has been featured on the Forbes list of the most powerful global brands multiple times. And Rolex is also the largest single luxury watch brand, making over 2,000 watches per day, all by hand. Some of the most famous wearers of Rolex include Justin Timberlake, Mark Wahlberg, Orlando Bloom, David Beckham, and Kanye West. The price range of this incredible brand ranges between $5,000 and $650,000. The most expensive Rolex ever sold is the Bow Die Rolex for $5 million in 2017. Bramant. Bramant is a luxury British watch brand that was founded in 2002. One of the more modern luxury watch brands. It's quite remarkable that a brand so young would wind up on a list like this, with brands that have literally been around for centuries. Bramant may be the least popular watch featured in this video, but it's one of my personal favorites, so I felt I couldn't leave it out. Bramant specializes in creating pilot watches of the highest style and functionality. Famous wearers of this iconic watch brand include Gordon Ramsay, Bear Grylls, as well as Tom Cruise. The Bramant Supersonic happens to be my latest watch purchase. The brand, just like the Breitling, was inspired by aviation. The founding brothers, Nick and Giles English, have upheld the inspiration that made their watches famous, shown through their watches' aircraft-themed and mechanically focused models. With classic curves and proportionate faces, these watches are true representations of this British company's image and branding. Audemars Piguet. Founded in 1875 by Jules Louis Audemars and Edward Auguste Piguet, Audemars Piguet produces 36,000 of their prestigious timepieces a year. In fact, Tiffany & Company and Bulgari use this brand's movements in their own watch mechanics. This luxury watch brand is also noted for creating the first steel luxury sports watch. This was dubbed the Royal Oak in 1972. Later, in 1993, the brand created the first oversized watch, named the Royal Oak Offshore. Audemars Piguet has simply been ahead of the game for hundreds of years, consistently being the first to set trends and break down barriers in the watch market. Still owned today by its original founding families, Audemars Piguet is one of the oldest watch manufacturers in the world. This is seen clearly in the classy design on the face of every watch. Audemars Piguet is a brand that begs an impossible question: how can a watch be so timeless? While this brand may be the last on the list, it is by no means the least. It's my personal favorite brand, and when it comes to any occasion of significance, I make sure I'm wearing an Audemars Piguet. And thankfully, I'm in good company, seeing as James Corden, Tom Cruise, LeBron James, and Usher also love to sport the brand as well. The price of these beautiful watches run about $7,000 to $850,000 plus. Well, time is money, and that about exhausts my knowledge of luxury watch brands. I hope you found this video helpful and maybe you feel inspired to save up for one of these master timepieces yourself. And